All right, that's all right. I think this is not gonna. Vince, how are you doing? Doing well. All right, so just testing my audio to see if I can run with this, and I'll hit record and get started. Thanks. All right. What is up? All right, everybody, welcome. I am on YouTube and I am streaming. Actually, let me hit record audio just in case we have a bitrate issue. But yeah, some of you have seen me actually. Let me mute this real quick. Yeah, so I'm actually recording a podcast right now. This is called This Developing Story. It's a podcast that I've been running since I started developing. But I took a 3-year hiatus. So my last episode you'll see here was actually streamed here on YouTube. I'm going to be doing this moving forward. The challenge right now, and Vince, you called it out, I am in a different room. I'm actually on the East Coast right now and hanging out with family. Well, not yet. We've been quarantining for the past 6 days. So I'm actually going to go and grab a test just to be confident that I can go see my 89-year-old grandma. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm in a different location. With that being said, I do not have my streaming set up. It actually comes in on Monday. I shipped it to myself. So I didn't have to worry about throw it in the check luggage or anything like that. So I don't have the proper equipment to do a full stream. So I'm using StreamYard like a caveman. Just kidding. Using StreamYard to basically solve that problem. And then I'm using my Mac as well. And that's what I was sort of fiddling with before. Everything was I could tell my Mac was not handling it very well. So I'm using my FaceTime camera because my DSLR is too powerful or something. But yeah, so just trying to appease the StreamYard gods to let me stream. And then I've got StreamYard sharing my screen. So honestly, I might use this on Twitch later today. I might just use this setup. It's not the best setup. Definitely not I'm a fan of StreamYard, but I don't have obviously my chat integrations or anything like that at my fingertips. So I'm hoping by next week I'll have everything set up and ready to go. So and it'll just be a different background. I do want to pick up a green screen, go back to that level of readiness, but I think I might just get like a bed sheet or something like that in the meantime. Gotta save that money. But so this podcast episode is actually be focused on continuous delivery, continuous deployments. It's a place that I'll be probably spending some time in the next couple months. I alluded to on this YouTube channel, so definitely like and subscribe. And I'm looking at the wrong camera the whole time too as well. I got 3 cameras up and only one of them works. But I actually previously on a This Developing Story episode, I walked through my goals for 2021. And my goals really were around, one, I wanted to actually double down on leveraging databases. I've always avoided databases in the last couple of months, mainly because of cost reasons. So what I would like to do is actually dig deeper into messing around with databases and scaling products really for the whole year. So I'm actually looking forward to that. The other thing is automation, which is what I'm going to focus here on this episode. And then finally, creating more content. So I have been cranking some videos out like I was back in October. I was doing like almost 2 a week for the whole month. So I'm getting back to that sort of swing of things. But I need to get back to writing code. So I'm looking forward to getting back to writing code today and setting up a new project. So a couple projects that I mentioned in passing that I'm going to be building this year. One project is a dinner people app. It's really just an app for people to socially connect while socially distancing over dinner. There's a couple other features that I won't get into now. I'll keep my cards close to the chest, but I will most likely open source the whole thing and probably stream the majority of it. Probably a good half of it on stream in future streams. It's going to be a mobile app, so I'm going to get back into React Native as the prototype solution. I'm only doing that just to get a prototype out. I do want to go native iOS in the future, and then I've got friends who do Android that I can probably contract to convert that over when I'm ready. But for now, probably iOS only, just for simplicity reasons. And consistency reasons too as well. So I'll be doing that. It's going to be an application. I mentioned React Native. I'm going to leverage all of the same UI experience I have just to get the prototype out quick. And then I think I'm going to probably reach out to some designers that I know and probably contract them to get proper design. But I think my goal short term is just get something out the door. So I'm hoping to do that in the next couple months. I also have obviously open source. If you've been around for a bit, open source is a project that I've spent a lot of time working on. It's something that I enjoy, but I haven't really spent a ton of time in the last couple months really working on it. I've been really just maintenance and cleanup. So I do have that feature, which is the recommendation engine for contributions. Think of like Yelp, but for open source projects. I want to be able to say, like, if you want to contribute to open source, I want you to feel confident in this list of projects that you could recommend. One, you can recommend projects you're contributing to let everybody else know that there's a door open for them. And then 2, feel confident if I go to contribute to open source that I have projects I can contribute to based on my skill set and interest. So really just comes down to like, if I know JavaScript or C# or whatever it is, here are projects within that realm that I can contribute to. It's going to be twofold. Like there'll be at least a place where projects can opt in to it as well. And then that way we can sort of get the ball rolling on contributions sort of picking up in 2021. So those two projects, they will require, I'm actually going to build a recommendation engine outside of open source as like a separate entity, really. And then sort of like leverage APIs, Jamstack philosophy to connect it into the main app. I'm doing that mainly just for simplicity reasons, being able to test it in a sandbox. And then hopefully I can sort of inject it into the application later. It's a kind of the workflow I've used at Netlify previously, building sort of sandbox apps and then moving the code into the actual main product. It's just, yeah, it's easier to start greenfield than to start with existing applications and try to inject new features into it. And yeah, so it's just mainly for my sanity. Outside of that, I've actually been talking with some other people from GitHub on doing some side projects as well, which I'll get into once we figured out the sort of structure of that. So I feel energized for 2021, energized to work on projects, and I'm super excited to bring everybody who's watching along for the ride. So, but I did want to jump into this, which is a tweet that I sent back in October. So this would have been right as I was sort of picking up speed of the YouTube account, this channel here. And actually, if you listen to the audio version of this podcast, I am streaming this live on YouTube. We'll be streaming it every other week on Fridays here on youtube.com/iLikeRobots. So in case you missed that context, now you have it. I think it was like less than 100 listeners or downloads for my podcast. So if you weren't already following me on Twitter or weren't already informed, now you are. If you don't know, now you know. But I have a tweet pulled up here for everybody else who's watching, where I was trying to ship a Node WebSocket or Express server and host that in production. For years, I'd always avoided servers and leveraged things like serverless technologies and Lambdas and Netlify and sort of decoupling your backend. And I had a need, which was actually, and I saw Jason was here too as well. Jason, I'm in your time zone now, and it's nice. It's nice to wake up early and do a stream and it'd be light out. For so long, I was waking up like crazy early to do stuff. I don't even remember. That's not what it is. BWE. It's been a while since I touched this thing. Get Twitch. Yeah, so I built this thing, and Jason actually helped, which I call out Jason because he's here in the chat. But Jason actually helped out with this a bit and cleaned up a lot of the code that I prototyped on stream. But essentially, this was my sort of project that I wanted to ship and have it hosted somewhere. And it was a Express server. It talks to a WebSocket, and I sort of like, it was almost like as if I came out from under a cave for the past couple of years. I think I've had the benefit. I don't know if it's a benefit or I've been missing out, but I spent a lot of time not building a lot of large projects the last 3 years here at GitHub. I actually hit my 3-year mark at GitHub next month. So shout out to me. I'm not sure why I laughed at that, but what I'm getting at is I haven't really built a lot of projects that were long-standing. I built a lot of sort of demos, projects to sort of showcase different GitHub features, mainly things like GitHub apps, which meant I did a lot more sort of API development, a lot more, basically interacting with the API, not really building full-on projects, because I would build a project, do a training or a workshop, and then move on. So the last 3 years has been interesting because I haven't had to host anything. The other thing is, at GitHub, we have a enterprise Heroku account. So right off the bat, I get to use Heroku for free, basically. So I love everything I built. I just threw on Heroku because the beauty of Heroku is that it's sort of plug and play. And they have a pretty generous free tier. They do have dynos. So like when you're on a server, you get like 12 hours or something like that, I think. It's been a while since I paid for Heroku, so excuse me for not knowing all the details, but they do support a number of different languages and frameworks too as well out of the box. Now, this came up in conversation when I sent this tweet out asking, hey, what does everybody do in the hosting, their Node servers today? And I think a lot of times when we talk about Node, the thing that comes up a lot is, I'm saying Zeit, but they changed their name to Vercel. Vercel. And for the past couple of years, Vercel is like the go-to place to just throw together a Node server. If you had npm start for your site, which is trying to find their landing page. There you go. Develop, preview, and ship. If you just had a project that had npm start or a Node project, this was the place to go. I think mainly due to cost reasons and pricing and them sort of finding product market fit, they've constrained their product into like what you get for free is not what it used to be back when I first started using Zeit/Vercel. It used to be called Zeit. Now it's called Vercel. So for now on, just called it Vercel. But they have a ton of other features like this CDN, and they got a couple other like built-in features like their commerce platform too as well that they're partnering with other folks on. What I'm getting at is this would have been my go-to for getting a WebSocket server up and running. And I think I actually got it up and running. The challenge is a lot of my projects I have under an organization, which is open sourced. And I found it really quickly. So like BW Live, this is hosted on Vercel, and it works fine. No issue there. But when I started leveraging anything that was on open source under that organization, because of the organization, you automatically have to pay $20. For open source projects, you do get an opportunity to get a free plan for open source. I did submit that, but it didn't actually work for me. Like, obviously, I don't have a free plan, so it didn't work out. And for good reason. I think I probably should be paying the $20 a month for Vercel. It's funny that developers, you get paid, a decent salary for wherever you live, but when it comes to paying $20 a month, you try to, cut corners or lower costs. And I think it's because we've just been trained that developers as a whole, we get the opportunity to try a bunch of things for free. And for a long time, Vercel, in my mind, it's like, oh, I can just get most of my work done for free. If I bring this in, to GitHub and we use it, like obviously we would pay. But me as a solo developer, $20 a month, that's $240 a year. That's a good chunk of change for me and my budget with 2 kids, even on a developer salary based in San Francisco. It's just hard for me to just basically sign that money away. Now, for my BW Live site, I would probably pay like, $10-20 for it because I'm getting a lot of good use out of it. But for something as simple as Get Twitch, which is me prototyping interactions between GitHub and Twitch, which I didn't actually explain that. It's a webhook for interacting GitHub into Twitch. That it didn't seem that advantageous to, it doesn't seem that viable for me to start paying for that as like a little prototype, because what's going to happen is I'm going to pay for that and then I'm going to forget, and then I'm going to get stuck with the New York Times subscription that I can't cancel because they won't pick up the phone. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. I paid for the New York Times during the election because I wanted to get election results. And then, so I paid, it's $4 a month. And like, I'm not reading the New York Times. I just wanted to see the Electoral College. And they had like a cool map that was useful for me, and updates, live updates. And I'm still paying for that. And the election was in November. And because everything that you have to cancel, it takes too much time. It's like canceling a gym membership, which almost the same thing. It's like you have to go into the gym, sign a paper, and say you don't want to work out anymore. Why can't I just call on the phone? So I get the sales tactic. I get why it's harder to cancel things, which is why I'm usually pretty shy in the signing up or paying with my credit card, because I do a lot of writing. If you've watched me at all write code on Twitch, I'd use a lot of stuff. And if I paid for everything I tried out, I'd be paying a lot of money. So my goal here is to try some free stuff, get something up and running, showcase it, see if I can get product market fit or at least someone to sign up for it, and then consider paying for it. So that's where I'm at. So moving along, I talked about Vercel. I ended up using them and it worked. The pricing is really what slowed me down. Also with Vercel WebSockets, there was something else that was limiting. Actually, I don't think it was anything limiting. I think it actually worked out of the box. Oh yeah. This is what it was. Vercel actually, serverless functions support WebSocket connections. There was something that I found out that it just was not supporting, and that I had to use a different service. And I think where it came down to is that they recommended, the they're recommending Pusher, which I could switch services, but I already spent the time in getting this to work in WS, like the native Node WebSocket library. So it wasn't as clear in the documentation if I could just plug and play and get it to work, or I'd have to switch over to things like Pusher or Socket.io or something else. So it just seemed like for me, this to work out of the box, I'd have to switch to technology I was leveraging, and I wasn't really interested in that. I was just trying to get what I had working live. So I think Vercel is the best option if I chose it up front, which I might even do, to be quite honest. I might just switch to technologies because it is a plug and play. They do give me a pretty generous free tier where you can see this, where I can leverage serverless functions and Pusher. So I might actually do that in the future. But for now, that's not what I have. So moving along, there was this other site, which I think for the most part, I got it to work. I don't think I actually leveraged it in production. Actually, I'm not leveraging anything in production. I was actually only leveraging this with the local node server pointing to my OBS, which if you haven't used Twitch, right now I'm using StreamYard to stream this to YouTube. But with OBS, you can actually inject integrations and what do you call it? Web apps? They call it browser sources, basically a web browser that's leveraging things like these sockets to pipe in automation or activity inside of your OBS. You basically just manipulate that to show that on Twitch. I didn't explain that well. I do need to create a whole video series on how to build a Twitch integration. I do have plans. Actually wrote a blog post with the intent to make that into a video on YouTube, and I just never got around to it for some reason. But moving on, I just want to talk about Render. Render.com, it seems like it's almost like what I loved about Vercel early in the day, but also what I loved about Heroku is that it gives you a lot of easy stuff to do. It gives you a nice little interface to get this up and running, which is some of my gripes against some of the other tools I mentioned in the bit. But for deploying things like Docker containers, cron jobs, web servers, Render.com seems great out of the box. And they have WebSocket support by default. So this seems like a pretty good go-to solution. Now, they are pretty new. And also, folks, if you want to ask questions or anything like that, I'll probably take some time at the end to answer questions and just chat with y'all. So if you're going to stick around, I'll stick around as well. But what I'm getting at is, yeah, this seems like pretty good to go. And I think there's a thing that happens when Render.com has been around for at least a year now, maybe a couple years. I don't actually quite know when Render.com started. I guess I could click the about and check that out. And winner startup battlefield at Disrupt 2019. So I assume 2019 is when it came around. So yeah, a couple years. They're at a position where a lot of these newer platforms are, where they have a lot of momentum. I think they actually have VC funding as well. That's probably why they were at Disrupt. So they have all the momentum and the VC funding and like a young, scrappy team willing to do what it takes to appease users, which is something that I really appreciate in newer projects, is because I can go in there and be me, solo developer. And this is something that I guess keep in mind when you choose providers. And the reason why I'm sort of doing, I didn't quite explain what I'm doing. I'm doing a little showcase of all these different providers and talking through them and sort of coming to a conclusion of what decision I'm making for the projects I mentioned up front. So that's the goal here. But what I'm getting at is because they're young and scrappy, they have a lot to prove. You as a solo developer, you could have a lot of influence on the future roadmap and their product before they sort of start really focusing on enterprise. It's something I saw at Netlify. We catered a lot to the single solo developer, folks who are just building a lot of cool things, writing a lot of cool blog posts, and doing a lot of cool video series. So I bring this up because it's a nice thing to have, like access to the team, access to support. A lot of times with these teams, they'll have a support channel that's free for all users. Eventually, they'll shut it down to like forum support or something like that, where you have to ask a question in the forum and you get an answer in a couple of days or 24 hours. But this is the type of place that I like to leverage, because then I get a lot of good feedback about how to do things. I'm not the best developer, so when it comes to like trying to figure out something, I'm able to have a nice conversation with some of the developers on this product on how would I approach this, how would I approach that. If I go to Vercel at this point, I can ask these little questions and be like, hey, I don't know how to do WebSockets, or do you have any like links to examples of how to get a WebSocket up and running? They'll probably give me a link, but if I'm just kind of like blank slate, need some help, they'll be slow to respond. For example, when I asked for a free account for my open source project, it was like probably a week later, and by then I was like already moved on to another platform. So it took a bit of time for them to actually get back to me. So it's just that sort of experience and like what you're trying to get out of it. A lot of times people don't want to use support. They just want to sort of figure it out on their own, which is also totally fine. But render.com, for the most part, it seems like for a leveraging service, $7 a month, that's the type of pricing that Heroku was at when I first started using it. So $7 a month was like the sort of base tier to get stuff into production. It seems like they've gone up to 25, which for their features, I think 25 is definitely worth it. But for getting like similar features, even with a database, so if I got databases and some services for WebSockets, like I'm looking at 14 for some minimal usage. And this is a thing that I actually always come into choosing. And I just realized I stopped sharing my screen too as well. So everybody who's like considering like what I'm looking at, with the minimal usage that I have, like for example, on the stream of Twitch, I get about anywhere from 15 to 30 people who show up on the stream. So if I have an interaction or a WebSocket that's running on one of these services, I have to account for that much usage of folks using that. So if I'm playing video or audio, it's going to start adding up pretty quickly if I do a 4-hour stream. So I have to consider that I'm probably going to be paying for most of these services. Same thing with open source. Open source, if you're a contributor to open source and you don't know about this, there is if you log in, we have a contributor bar, so that we can get insight to what's happening in the project. Let's see. It is a little challenging to get up. Nope. There we go. So here I can see 206 users. So right off the bat, if I were to use one of these services for open source, I have to consider 200 people, at least 200 people leveraging those services and what that actually means for pay. So I am pretty much ignoring the free tier because I think I'm going to exceed the minimum for the free tier and actually move into the actual paid tier, especially when I talk about databases, because that's something that I know I'm going to have data up front for. All right, so I've talked about Heroku briefly. I talked about Vercel. I talked about render.com. And I've really been focusing just around the Node, the JavaScript ecosystem. Within that ecosystem, for what I was trying to accomplish, and I think Swizz, he provided some good feedback that actually pushed me away from using serverless functions, which was Vercel's recommendation. So I think that's probably the right reason why I didn't actually move with that. Ian's actually one of the maintainers for Create React App, and he mentioned, I didn't actually look into this, WebSockets support for AWS Gateway. This is something that I'd be interested in. I think that's the only thing that I'm limited. Oh, there we go. Yeah. The only thing that I always avoid AWS, because if you look at Vercel, if you look at Render, Heroku, they're all built on top of ecosystems like AWS. So I choose to use one of those tools instead of, go directly to the source and maintain that. It's because mainly these projects that I mentioned, they are projects that I don't have intention to provide maintenance on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. I mostly need to be able to set it for at least 3 months and forget it. And then when I have changes, then I can go back and fix things. But I can't actually be sort of the DevOps engineer for these side projects to be able to keep these things up and running. So, but for what I'm seeing right here, AWS API Gateway has WebSocket support. And I didn't actually look into this, but this is interesting. And it looks like there's actually a simple chat app too as well, which is kind of fits the example that I have. So this is something I should probably look into because I know costs wise, if I use them directly AWS, the cost is going to be minimal based on the usage, even the usage that I was sort of explaining. So it's something else that I would like to look into. But I'm going to shift gears a bit. There were some other recommendations. Begin.com is something else that I was interested in. They actually scalable infrastructure on AWS, so you can actually manage. They kind of remind me of serverless.com back in the day. Being able to manage your AWS interactions through Begin is something that I like the idea of. And I know this team. I don't know how big they are now, but I know the founders, and I've met them a couple of times. And they're on my list of things that I would like to check out. I just haven't had the time to check them out. I should actually have them on the podcast in the future. No servers, no config, no sweat. Yeah, so this is a service solution, no lock-in, and I think they're in a similar position too as well. When you think about pricing, they're pretty generous on the pricing, so up to 5 apps, single developer. This is a world that I'd probably end up sitting, not really paying for a long time. They're also a growing product too as well. So I would have a lot of opportunity to sort of grow with them, which is something that I've been really interested in doing, is this growing and getting access to the team, but also sort of like developing something alongside of them. So this is something I'll probably put some time into. I did actually get this running too as well, my Get Twitch running on Begin. So something I will definitely try out in the future. But I did want to take a step back away from these deployment platforms and talk about this continuous delivery. So a lot of folks, we know about continuous integration, integration being like running your test every time you hit push to Git. That's something that I think is paramount. It's actually something I would highly recommend you do, is set up continuous delivery for your apps and your projects too as well. And let me take a break and I wonder if I can raise there we go. Make it a little brighter. With the FaceTime camera, you have to actually put a ton of light on yourself so it's not grainy, but here we are. So what was I getting at? Oh, continuous delivery. So yeah, this is something that I was actually super interested in. And I'm curious I mentioned I wanted to use React Native. I've been wanting to use Expo for the longest time on a project. Because when I think about continuous delivery, it's the idea of when you merge your stuff into your main branch or your default branch, the ability to just have stuff deploy automatically without needing to worry about, did it work? Did it fail? Like if you have test, then you understand that if your test pass, there's the most likelihood of your deploy being successful is higher. So I want to double down on testing in the future, but also want to double down on confidence of just deploying stuff. So when I talk about this app, Dinner People, which is something that I'll be working on hopefully soon, please mind the UI. This is sort of my example that I created, and I sort of stole a template from the Gatsby templates. But yeah, none of this works. But what I'm getting at is I want to be able to launch a project, but have access to like the iOS App Store. And with Expo, my understanding is that you can launch it, and you do get AWS, sorry, not AWS. You get Android support as well, which is good to hear. So I want to see how quickly I can get an Expo app up and running. And the thing is, every time I actually build something on Expo, I end up falling off, or the need for the app itself kind of falls away. Like I don't need the app anymore. So I ended up I've tested it a couple times, but it never actually followed through. But what I like about this is being able to have access to sending stuff over the air updates, making changes without needing to go back through the review cycle or create new releases. I don't know if the iOS store has cracked down on that or not. But I have the idea of easy integration to test flight. So years ago, I was building iOS apps, and I learned Swift, I learned Objective-C, and I was building some iOS apps. I never got them into the store, and it really just comes down to I didn't know what I was doing. Because when it came time to I can get the app onto my phone, I could test it, but I could never figure out how to properly make a build to then get that to get published somewhere else. I've been paying for it as an iOS developer license for over 5 years now, and I still haven't been able to use it. And it just came down to like I just didn't know what I was doing when it came to that point, and I just didn't have enough information to get over the hurdle. So I kind of just fell off even trying. So I'm hoping my goal is actually get the app in the app store and sort of check that box. It's been a goal of mine for a long time, and I've been wanting to go back into like mobile development just in general. But I think, as I mentioned before, at GitHub, my focus has been totally different and different things, and I really haven't. I also had I have a 2.5-year-old, so also she's the reason where I just don't have a lot of time to spend weekends and nights working on another project that's going to cause me to learn way more and put more effort into it. I will say now I have way more time now that she's older, and my sleep schedule is back on track. So what I want to do is actually, I'll probably just end up leveraging Expo to get that continuous deployment experience to actually get something up and running. So look out for in the next couple of weeks on Twitch stream. I'll probably be doing some Expo work, getting that Dinner People app up and running. Yeah, definitely looking forward to that. With that being said, the other thing that I was interested in mentioning too is when continuous delivery. Not sure why I'm mixing up my words and fumbling over everything, but GitHub launched some continuous delivery action features that I think they're going to be pretty paramount to me learning and leveraging as well, and kind of integrating all these different platforms, so like JavaScript, Node.js, React Native, being able to sort of integrate that and have things that I could deploy to test flight from a GitHub action would be really interesting. Actually, is there CI for test flight? That's something that I'm sort of just guessing, but beta testing, fine. Well, I can get beta testers, which is actually interesting. Semaphore, I've definitely heard of Semaphore. But yeah, so yeah, this is all stuff that, well, I'm not going to be using Swift or Xcode at first. But also, if anybody who's listening and watching, definitely, if you know any mobile designers, folks maybe who might be in the junior level for cost reasons, I'm happy to pay, but I don't know if I have that much extra capital to put on this side project. I'm actually looking for a mobile designer to help out with making a couple screens for this application, mainly because I don't know what I'm doing. So I want to have an idea of what the screens will look like before I start writing code. I found that in the last couple of years, if you know what you're doing before you start writing your first line of code, it's so much easier, especially if you map out the database, if you architect the database before you start, or if you map out the screens or the design or all of the above. It's the process is so much more smooth if you don't have to try to figure all that out from scratch. So that's where I'm at. That's where I like to be, and hopefully I'll be able to figure that out. I think that sort of rounds up continuous delivery. Actually, I didn't continuous delivery. Look up the Wikipedia. Continuous delivery is a software engineering approach in which teams produce software in short cycles, ensuring that software can be reliable, released at any time, and releasing software doing manually. It aims at building, testing, releasing software with greater speed and frequency. Yeah, so essentially that just sort of gives you the confidence to be able to ship apps on a regular basis. And if I for any like going through all these different tools and platforms, those are all things I've sort of done the research and understand that I could actually set up a continuous delivery pipeline to make sure that when I make changes in GitHub, there's no thought process of how to get this into production, or if I need to make a staging server or whatnot, there's no thought process that comes up as well. So I hope that was insightful. If you have any questions about this sort of continuous delivery in general, or if you have any other examples that weren't covered, I'm more than happy to hear your thoughts and hear feedback too as well on the format, how I can make this podcast, these streams more enjoyable. I'm hoping that in the next couple of weeks, once I get my streaming PC back, I'll be able to start integrating some chat integrations for YouTube. Also, feedback on YouTube as well. I'm using YouTube mainly because this place it's already set up for me. I'm doing less code on YouTube. Actually, I'm not doing any code on the live streams in YouTube. It's mainly just sort of having my just chatting, which on Twitch, just chatting is something that exists, but I always felt weird just chatting on Twitch. I feel more comfortable in the science and technology space. Also, I don't know what I'm going to get if I go into just chatting, depending on the chat interactions. So with that fear, here I am on YouTube. Also, I'm curious, folks, hit me up. Let me know what your thoughts are on creating content in 2021. YouTube is definitely proven successful for me so far. Like success is like I'm not a million subscribers, but success for me is actually having a platform for me to get content on a consistent basis. The interactions with the community have mostly been positive through the comments. I know YouTube comments is something that is challenging for most people on YouTube. I'm hoping that I don't have to shut off comments in the future, but moderation is on, so come at me. All right, so I'm gonna end this, and yeah, thanks for chatting. Excellent. All right, the stream's still going. I just stopped the audio for the podcast itself, and I think thanks for listening. The other thing that, yeah, so I'm gonna edit the audio and take that and then put it on This Developing Story as its own separate podcast. I'll probably do it its own intro. That's what I've been doing, and it'll probably go up sometime this weekend. So for anybody who's watching and has questions on the format, yeah, the music is a little loud. Oh, interesting. That is good to know. Yeah, it was on full blast as well, and I completely missed that comment too as well. Excellent. All right. So if anybody doesn't have any questions, I am going to kill the stream. Thanks for watching. Thanks for coming along for the ride. This is something that I've been planning and toying around with. So yeah, we'll figure this out. I might try StreamYard again next week if I can figure out how to make it better. I'm not really sure. I'm not paying for anything, so that's why I have the watermark on it. But yeah, we'll see. Well, only at the beginning, but there wasn't any music during the podcast. No, yeah, with StreamYard, I can't actually pipe in music the way I would want to. I could with OBS, but my Mac is just not going to have it with OBS. I was already seeing it like kind of take off a bit. So I'll have to figure out, do some planning. But I do have 2 weeks until the next time I do a stream on YouTube. Actually, I'm going to be streaming later today. Yeah, on Twitch. We'll figure out how to get the music working on Twitch. I think I might just power through and see about getting that to work through OBS, because I do have OBS, but I'll have to probably close a couple things. But anyway, I'm going to stop the stream. Thanks, everybody. Definitely head over to the Discord, say hello. I think everybody here is in the Discord, but yeah, stay saucy.